the requirements of the federal law. But we're on a very fast track. Did I already say that?
Yeah.
So, and we've been asked to engage stakeholders in a deep way. About a month ago, we had Senator Lamar Alexander visit the state and testify in front of our Education Committee. And he repeated the importance of stakeholder engagement and the state building consensus. He repeated the importance of bipartisan conversations and bipartisan work on this effort. We know, any of us who work in the policy sphere, know how long some of these conversations can take. So, Stephen, I think we're really fortunate that in your first, within your first 6 months on the job, you set out around the state with town hall meetings, and you engaged stakeholders at that time. Talk a little bit more, both of you, about the importance of ensuring we're lifting up all those voices, and the importance as we think about closing the achievement gap and ensuring we are serving populations of students who have far too often been left behind.
Well, I've been asked before, how do you ensure everybody has a voice? And my opinion generally is you got to make sure that you let them speak with their voice. You can do a lot of things to manipulate things, make it look like they do. But for me, all this had to start with me getting out around the state and listening to what Kentuckians value. I mean, I was new. It was a great opportunity for me to get out and visit the state. I got to go visit, and they were never, I just showed up at town halls. I would go to the schools in the morning and those in the evening, and so it was a great way for me to get to know Kentucky. But what those town halls did were, in large part, shaping what we're now doing with the accountability system, because we've heard them. We did hear some. I'm unfortunate to say, we need to back off a little bit because, and it killed me every time I would hear people say, well, our kids can't quite fill in the blank, and I don't think there's any kid that can't quite. But by and large, the things that I heard were huge in that they helped drive home some of my personal beliefs on some things, but also to really enlighten us about the desire of the public. At every town hall, we had between 200 and 300 people, which was a lot of people to come to a town hall meeting. And you always worry about that. You go out and you're not going to have 8 people there, but there were 200 to 300. They would come. They were not shy. The art community was very organized, and it reemphasized a lot of really important things. So much so that it's going to be an annual event for me. We're right now putting together my town hall schedule for this year. It'll start at the end of March, and I'm hoping to not do the 11-stop 5-week tour again, because that was a little bit stressful, especially because we were doing it during the legislative session. But we got a short session this year. Put quotes around that. But it was huge for us to get started that way. And then I felt like going into the actual development of the system, if I either A, ignored what I heard, or B, did not continue what I started. And that's one of the reasons why I pushed back really hard on the US Ed, was this timeline, the way they had it. I love guardrails, but as I said to them, they actually what they were doing was more like concrete barriers on a one-lane rural road, because it was driving us to go really, really fast. I'm hopeful that they're going to back off that timeline a little bit, but we'll see. But because of that, I didn't feel like even with all the stress and pressure of getting it done quickly, I felt like I would be remiss as commissioner to not make sure that all of our shareholders had an opportunity to be a part of it.
And clearly, Stephen, as you're talking about town hall meetings in 2017, then you see a value in continued stakeholder engagement, even as we move into implementation of the new system.
Yeah, actually, I'm of the belief that no great education initiative ever died in the vision phase. It dies in the implementation phase. And so while I hope to get a system that we can be steady for 3 consecutive years, because Kentucky's actually been adding stuff for a while and taking some stuff away, I hope we can get to one we can keep in place for 3 years. But at the same time, I want to be accessible enough and listen to the field enough so that if we see where there are major issues, we can make adjustments. We've got some stuff in the current system that, quite frankly, they were great ideas, but the way the math works, it doesn't necessarily give a real indication of the work that's going on. And it probably needed to have been evaluated a little bit differently.
So steady progress, continuous improvement.
Yes.
Katie, what are you seeing nationally? How are states responding to gain stakeholder engagement?
It's kind of interesting because states are feeling pretty good about stakeholder engagement. Stakeholders we talk to are not feeling quite as good about it. And I think it depends on who you talk to. So there's essentially 3 moments in the design of an accountability system where you want stakeholder engagement. First, we talked about more today, and that's kind of on the front end. You want to hear what's on people's mind, what parents care about in particular, and how educators are experiencing the current system. Then you got a design phase, and who's in that room is really critical, and it's really easy to limit that too much because it's technical. So when we look at most of the states, the committees that are doing that work, they're largely educators. Almost no, there's, maybe one person from an urban league, but if you ask the question, are people in the room who represent the sort of full range of kids in the state? Answer, not even close. Then there's the third stage, which is you got some tentative ideas and you want to get some response to them. And every single one of these stages, critically important, that especially the groups of kids that have been behind, that are the victims of these opportunity gaps, if you will. Those parents need to be in the room. The groups that work with those parents need to be in the room to make sure that continues to be a strong focus. Y'all have set a strong goal around closing the achievement gap here in Kentucky. That's not going to happen unless those voices are in the room and become partners with you in this work.
So with that, I think we want to open it up for questions and answers, or questions from our Pritchard Committee members and guests. So Pam?
Well, you talked about the 707, what's the name? Yeah, excuse me. What I want to know is when you finish this, will people like me be able to understand it? Will parents be able to understand it? Or will it just be some enormous thing that's very complicated that people will not relate to?
Well, my goal is that everybody understands it. When you're standing in line at the grocery store, you can have it explained or you can explain it. In simple terms, now, I mean, it's probably one of the most complicated things in all of education.
Right. I mean, I see the problem.
Yeah. I mean, I've sort of started joking lately. It's education is not rocket science, because rocket science is actually easier. I think that my goal is that it is that way. In fact, I've made a couple of friends in my travels that actually focus on simple speak. And as we're progressing down the road, I'm actually going to bring them in and say, so here's what I think I would want to say about this. What would you tell me back? One of them in particular that I've met recently, like in the last 4 months, I was on a panel with him. He'll tell me in no uncertain terms when it's not understandable by the public, and I actually trust him. I think that it's actually his job is to take education issues in Illinois and make them normal speak.
Well, Katie was saying we can't sit this one out, and we won't sit it out, but if we don't know what to say, we won't be able to contribute.
That's right. And the thing that and Bridget could talk to this too, I think sometimes on our steering committee, they have actually felt frustrated at times because we've spent so much time talking about the values of the system. And some of them wanted to jump right into the math, right into the calculations. It's like, well, but the calculations are irrelevant if they don't lead us to a value. And so for us, it's been more about focusing on what do we want the system to be able to do. And then let's figure out the math or the measure or whatever that can get us there. But my goal is that at the end of this whole thing, that every Kentuckian who chose to be a part or who are in the system either by their child's in school or because they're an educator themselves, that they can understand it and be able to explain to others.
And there are some important questions, though, that you can ask of the system as a whole when it's kind of through its initial design phase, and especially given your strong interest around closing these long-standing gaps, and that is, can a school get a good mark, even if it's not moving the needle for some group of kids? And if the answer to that is yes, that's not a good system. It's not going to get you where you need to go.
Amen to that.
And, you know, if schools in our state didn't change much of anything, and they were progressing about the same rate they've been progressing, Kentucky schools have indeed been progressing, how many of them would be likely to meet these goals? And if the answer to that is, on the whole, more than 50%, then it's not a system that's stretching, it's not ambitious. And if the answer vis-a-vis goals for, say, black kids in Kentucky isn't something closer to 10 or 20%, then you don't have stretch in the system. So when you get to that phase, there are some basic questions that you can ask that bring your values to the table here. And the answers to those will tell you a lot about whether you're likely to be sending the signals that are important or those somehow got mushed along the way.
So,
Question in the back?
Thank you. Hi, Megan Glenn, Kenton County Schools. We have 4 in public schools in Kentucky. Thank you, Katie. It was great to talk with you over lunch, and you, Dr. Pruitt. I love this report. I love all the work that went into it. And as I contemplate what should we do as members, what's useful in the year ahead, I wonder if the answer, at least for some of us, isn't in the title, with business. All the data is there. You're all well-versed, obviously, in education. We've got great universities represented here. And I wonder if our role isn't bringing specific businesses along, and specific business leaders, HR directors, board members of publicly traded companies, because the first conclusion is fill the job openings in our industries, stores, schools, and service groups. And there's not a company I don't work with where the first or second thing they bring up is, right, a ready workforce. And as the timeline is finalized, as community meetings are set, perhaps we put it on ourselves, all right, I know I've got to bring 5 people from these businesses specifically, and maybe that's on us. I don't know if that's helpful or not.
I would say it is. I have been on record several times lately talking about the achievement gap and basically challenging us to realize that we have to own it. You know, the days of sitting around and wringing our hands and saying, oh, it's bad, we've got an achievement gap, we really need to do something about that, we've got to end. It's time for some action. And I think that that's got to be, you know, I was the first to raise my hand and say, I own it as commissioner. But the reality is if I own it by myself, we're not really going to get very far. And so as we are going through this, as sometimes as difficult, frustrating, and painful as it is, the more of us that do take that type of attitude and say, we're going to bring more people to the table. We're going to have a voice. We're going to push on various things. And one of the great things I think about Kentucky that brought me here was we can have those conversations and leave the politics outside the door. And so being able to have a dialogue, because I mean so much of education can be fixed by simply talking to somebody. And so having the right voices at the table, a lot of voices at the table, I think this is doable, but it's going to have to be, we all take ownership of the issue, and we as owners of it, make sure that we are helping others see that they need to own it as well.
Larry?
Do we have the ability to facilitate a conversation that's that big and that complex in the amount of time we have? I mean, I hope we do. I'm asking about the capabilities to listen effectively to enough people to help them understand the issues that need to be addressed so their concerns can be on point and effective, and so that we know what to do with them when we hear them.
I don't by myself. It's why I've got to have good partners. It's why the Pritchard Committee's been a great partner. It's why the Chamber, I saw Dave somewhere earlier, has been a great partner. I mean, our Board of Education members are talking about it when they're out in the field. We're going to post all kinds of resources on the web that if you want to have your own meetings, you can have them. If you want us to help you have them, we can help you have them. But I think that when I said earlier about the fact that we have to own it, the fact that we have to, I can't just legislate it or just mandate it, that we have to bring everybody along, means that all of us have to start having that conversation. Do we have all the time we need? Probably not. But do we have time that we can get a good picture of where we need to go? I believe we do.
Carol Johnson, we've struggled a little bit